Hello, and welcome to Food for Thought, a show produced by university students from around the world. I'm Friha Zafar.
And I'm Alessandra Di Frasneto from Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada.
I am Giovanna Dionisio here with Marcela Matsuki.
We are at Methodista University in São Bernardo do Campo, Brazil.
And I'm Abby Lord with Yael Lutanvila at Leeds Trinity University in the UK.
This is one of the 7 shows we're producing. You can watch them all in our website, our YouTube channel, and Facebook page.
All of our shows are about food. We've covered serious topics like food waste and how our sugary diets affect our health, but have also celebrated the delicious and varied foods from our many countries around the world.
This episode will focus on food insecurity. In the world, 811 million people increased food insecurity and 34 million hunger during the pandemic.
We will look at the effects that COVID-19 has had on the food access, as well as how certain countries are working to combat food insecurity. Let's get started.
Although it had already been considered a distant reality in recent times, currently the number of people experiencing hunger is growing a lot.
In only 2 years, the number of people who are off or have already suffered hunger in the country has almost doubled. Let's understand a little more about the cases and consequences of this situation in the video report by Leonardo Nogueira from the Methodist University of São Paulo.
O drama da fome no Brasil cresce a cada ano. Vemos diversas situações tanto nas ruas quanto em domicílios. Segundo a última pesquisa feita pelo Instituto Brasileiro de Geografia e Estatística, o IBGE, em 2018 o número de pessoas nessa condição era de 10,3 milhões. Já em 2020, a Rede Brasileira de Pesquisa em Soberania e Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional, PENSAN, mostra que o Brasil possui atualmente cerca de 19 milhões de pessoas nesse estado, ou seja, houve um aumento de 9 milhões só nesse período de 2 anos. Diariamente, pessoas passam por dificuldade nas ruas, sem comida, água, um direito social do brasileiro, segundo a Constituição.
Mamãe e papai jogavam muito na cara, eu não aguentei sair de casa aos 13 anos de idade.
Não tenho dúvida, as pessoas não têm mais moeda, né? Quem ajudava não está ajudando mais. Mas mesmo assim tem pessoas boas ainda.
Muitas são ajudadas por ONGs, que levam alimento e kits de higiene até elas. Humberto de Almeida, um dos gestores da ONG Irmãos de Rua, conta como funciona o fornecimento.
Antes da pandemia, nós entregávamos lanche toda segunda-feira no centro de São Paulo, Praça da Sé e adjacências, atendendo 1.000 pessoas. Após a pandemia, nós passamos a trabalhar, fazer as missões de segunda e quarta no centro de São Paulo, na mesma região, e de terça e quinta no café da manhã, no ABC.
A pandemia da Covid-19 fez com que aumentasse o número de pessoas nas ruas e a fome consequentemente, disse Maristela Versbicas, que faz missões pela ONG Anjos na Rua.
A fome realmente aumentou bastante, nós levávamos 600 marmitas diárias, porém passamos a levar também mais 200 pãezinhos.
A situação fica mais grave na parte de cima do país. Menos da metade dos domicílios tinham acesso pleno e regular aos alimentos. Em 2020, o índice de segurança alimentar esteve acima de 60% no norte e 70% no nordeste.
Metade das crianças menores de 5 anos no país viviam em domicílios com algum grau de insegurança alimentar.
Uma das consequências da criança que passa por privações nutricionais são crianças que apresentam mais dificuldades de concentração, são crianças que apresentam mais dificuldades de raciocínio, uma sensibilidade imunológica e que põem em desvantagem para, por exemplo, concluir os seus estudos.
Até 2013, pesquisas mostravam regressão da fome no país. Hoje temos 44,8% da população em insegurança alimentar, o maior índice desde 2004, quando o país tinha 64,8%. Mas quais seriam os meios para combater a fome?
Esse é um assunto de difícil trato, é um assunto complexo, e aqui no Brasil não é diferente. Eu acredito sim que existam aí formas e programas que possam vir a diminuir ou erradicar a fome, mas esses ainda esbarram em interesses eleitoreiros e políticos.
With the rising unemployment in Brazil, I noticed there are more people who are hungry during the pandemic, unfortunately. This is why many food banks and charity projects were born during the pandemic. How about England, Debbie?
It's the same in the UK, Marcella. close to 50% of the unemployed people are facing food insecurity. During the pandemic, certain members of the British public were giving a helping hand with an extra £20 per week universal credit handout. However, that has recently come to an end, and now there are worries about how many of them will require the help of food banks, who already assisted some 2.5 million people during the pandemic. Mark Singleton from Leeds University has been to a charity in Leeds to find out more.
Catch is a registered charity working with adults and young people in the Hare Hills district of Leeds, with the aim of creating a safe space for the whole community. The pandemic hit areas like Hare Hills particularly hard, and Catch decided to develop its food bank to meet the ever-increasing need. It repurposed an old bus to use as its food bank, and is able to source a variety of food, household and sanitary products for distribution in the community. Catch was able to integrate and develop its existing garden area to grow fresh vegetables that could be distributed along with the dried and tinned goods. With the recent removal of the additional £20 universal credit payment, more pressure will be put back on families, and I wonder just how many more families will need services like this.
There's always been a food need in this area. And we've supported it in little ways in the past with a cafe. We've had families come in and collect bread that we've had donated and things like that. So we were aware that there was a definite issue with food for local families. So we thought, well, this is going to only get worse, so let's look at opening a food bank, and that's what we did.
Food insecurity is an ongoing issue in many communities all over the world, which is why it's really interesting to hear how different countries approach food banks.
California produces nearly half of the fruits and vegetables in the United States, but 1 in 5 Californians struggle with food insecurity. The Central California Food Bank is a lifeline to thousands of people who need help putting food on the table. Brooke Chow from our Fresno University has more on the story.
Feeding thousands of people in Fresno would not be possible without community members volunteering. A local Fresno mother volunteered her young daughters to learn the importance of giving back to the community. The food bank relies on volunteers like these to help feed thousands of local families each week.
We have over 6,000 volunteers throughout the year, and without them, our staff just wouldn't be able to get the items out or even make it in time efficiently for feeding all the 350,000 individuals each month.
Over 300,000 people have been fed just this past month by the Central California Food Bank. These numbers have nearly doubled since before the pandemic. 25% of families seeking help from the food bank are here for the first time and are struggling to provide food for their families. With the holidays already here, volunteers are working around the clock, packing holiday food boxes so that members of our community do not have to worry about whether or not they will have a Thanksgiving dinner. We are here packaging 800 boxes for the holidays, and the Central California Food Bank will be giving out 20,000 of these boxes to local families. Although half of the nation's fruits and vegetables come from right here in the Central Valley, the access to these foods are hard to come by. The price of fresh produce has increased, and for many of these farmers, their jobs are seasonal. They are just not making enough money to keep what they grow.
Fresno actually has the 3rd worst food hardship rate in the nation, and about 1 in 4 people in the Fresno area struggle with hunger on a daily basis.
25% of families in Fresno do not have the luxury to get to choose what they're going to eat for dinner. Instead, it's if they get to eat dinner. Over 54 million pounds of food was distributed this past year, and the food bank hopes to maintain those numbers and feed local families during the holidays. I'm Brooke Chow at Fresno State in California, United States of America.
In Toronto, food banks have been recorded the highest ever number of visits, and the number of people relying on food banks for all of their groceries has increased substantially since the pandemic began in early 2020.
Yes, and a new report indicates that there were 1.45 million visits to Toronto food banks during the first year of the pandemic. That's the most that's ever been recorded in the city's history. It represents a staggering increase of 47% compared to the same period last year.
We've talked about food banks in the UK. I'm interested to learn how about food banks in Brazil.
Here in Brazil, we have national food banks, but it's not enough to help the entire population. That's why we have a lot of people who make donations for some institutes and non-government organizations. I created a project on a pandemic to donate food to people who need, and we could help almost 150 people with it.
One group of people who experience food insecurity around the world are refugees. For example, here in Brazil, there are about 1.3 million refugees. Over 260,000 are from Venezuela.
Canada has accepted about 30,000 refugees a year for the past decade, including many from Syria, Haiti, and Colombia.
The UK is one of the countries with a high refugees rate in Europe. Within the UK, asylum seekers are not permitted to work and not eligible to a state benefit.
Many local organizations benefit, however, as asylum seekers offer their time, skills, and experience to benefit others in the city while they await a decision on their asylum-seeking claim. In Bradford, a small cafe run by refugee trainee chefs cook and serve homemade worldwide food. The Welcome Cafe, in partnership with the Millside Center, trains refugees and asylum seekers in catering, cooking, customer service, and provides them the right skills to build confidence to become employable. I went to find out more. According to the Bradford Council 2020 report, the UK throws away 7 million tons of food and drinks from their homes every year. With so much food going to waste, the Welcome Cafe not only trains refugees how to cook, but serves surplus meals that were at risk of being thrown away.
On a Thursday, we decide what we're going to cook for the next week. What are the recipes? What should we do? And we have a look at what ingredients we already have. Like, so today we have a lot of eggs. So next week we're going to use all of those eggs up. So try and keep everything different from one week to another. We don't try not to repeat our recipes. The most rewarding is the fact that we, at the end of the day, we've cooked meals for people. We fed people who. From food that would have gone in the bin.
The Welcome Cafe first opened during COVID-19, right in the middle of the UK first lockdown. But the business still kept going by cooking food for the people in need.
We kind of looked at it, we thought, yeah, this is a good idea that we will cook food from their countries. So for whoever we get, we'll ask them for their recipes and their food. And so we don't want to be cooking baked potatoes and pizzas and stuff that we can buy better from down the road, or paninis and things. Especially the women, they love coming in and say, this is from my country and this is what I cook at home and this is what my mum used to make. Even the men are saying, oh, my mum used to make it like this and my mum used to make it. And they may not have even cooked it living here, because a lot of them live in bedsits where they haven't even got cookers and things like that. So
thanks to this project, a lot of refugees are now looking forward to utilize their cooking skills. Mrs. Vanessa da Costa, a kitchen trainee, is one of them.
It's been so amazing these few weeks, because it's like a group of us who work. So we all share things, we all do things it's like a teamwork, which is the best thing. And it makes me feel so happy. It feels like I actually have work.
And I think a lot of customers do come because they know, yes, it's a really, really good cause, but it's also really, really good food, and that you can have, it's a really simple menu, and in a sort of conventional business sense, for a cafe, it shouldn't work. Just having, this is what's on the menu, that's it. But because I think we've got such a diverse range of flavours and cultures, it does work, because it's things that I wouldn't know how to cook that at home. I wouldn't know where to start with a Ugandan egg Rolex. So if it could take off, if you could have welcome cafes in other cities, that would be absolutely incredible. So many asylum seekers or refugees are very isolated. Okay, some will have arrived on their own, some will have arrived with family, but you still need to feel part of a community.
It was fantastic to see these refugees putting the time and energy in a Welcome Cafe and serving the community. It was absolutely amazing. I wish them luck to the Welcome Cafe.
Of course, it's not just adults who face food insecurity. The Save the Children charity estimates that almost 6 million children under 5 around the world are on the brink of starvation, and another 13 million are facing extreme food shortages.
Nowadays here in Brazil, there are lots of programs that provide meals to children and their families. Even during the pandemic, when schools were closed, for example, schools that were in lockdown were donating foods that weren't meant for kids to their parents so they could still have meals. And I thought it was really cool because the family didn't run out of food and the fruits, vegetables, and meat didn't expire.
Speaking of donating, I know that the Ontario government here in Canada actually invested $1 million to improve access to healthy meals and snacks for school-aged children and youth during the pandemic.
In the UK, there is also a problem feeding children in need. With so many people losing their jobs and income as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, the government stopped providing their children with meals.
Manchester United and England footballer Marcus Rashford began campaigning to tackle child hunger, and because of this, businesses across the country stepped up to help families. 1 year later, a Leeds business owner talked to Kaya God from Leeds Trinity University about why he helped.
Giorgio's Italian on Otley Road is a family-run business, and despite the effects COVID was having on them, they still chose to help out after being inspired by England and Manchester United footballer Marcus Rashford.
Some families out there and some children that they needed our help.
George's restaurant, Giorgio's, received a letter from the House of Commons for their work feeding children. The letter said, "It has been so heartening to see local businesses, authorities and community groups stepping in to plug the gap and feed hungry children over the holidays."
You're watching Food for Thought, a series of shows produced by students from 10 different universities around the world. There are longer versions of many of our interviews, like the one we just heard, on our website.
Food insecurity is a huge issue around the world, but it's good to see that so many individuals and organizations are working to make a difference.
When I saw the story from California with the mom who brought her kids to the food bank, it really reminded me when I was younger, when I volunteered at a lot of food banks after school, and it was really eye-opening to see how we take food for granted a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And just talking about food banks, I work at a food bank, and this past couple of years, we have gotten nearly double the amount of people that we usually do due to the pandemic. And the program that I specifically work with in the food bank is the Feed the Homeless program, in which we usually make food for people who are on the streets, unfortunately. And I've noticed that ever since the pandemic, it's like there's never enough food. No matter how much food I bring out, there's just such a large amount of people, unfortunately, on the streets in downtown Toronto.
Well, I feel rich people got richer and poor got poorer during the pandemic. So we have to find a way to take care more of people in social vulnerability and try to balance the situation. I know it's difficult, but at least provide daily meals and not let anyone go hungry. It has to be a priority.
Well, I go to a church where they help families by contributing with the food bank. They help families who can't really buy food for their children. And I think it's a beautiful thing to help families who can provide for themselves.
It's been great working with you all. Thanks for watching and goodbye.